Destroy the tornado. There's an objective for you.
Hmm.
And where's Picos Bill when you need him?
I get the feeling that's not the right way to stop this tornado. Let's do a damn. Hi.
Hey, John. Then I was wondering if the previous area might have been one of those endless horde bits, but then it turns out, yeah. It turns out they probably can't hear me while this is going on.
Right.
Looking at the waveforms over there, it actually does feel like we're shouting into a tornado.
Which is kind of atmospheric, but at the same time, I don't know if my voice can withstand this. Alan!
Yeah, we need to try to like check the forecast of when a windstorm is going to be here. Like you open up the windows and do literally atmospheric, have an atmospheric factor to it. You know what you must do: shoot the tornado with a flare gun.
I don't think that's actually what I'm supposed to do. Nevertheless, that kind of seems like maybe what I am supposed to do.
Well, I wonder if you just have to keep destroying things in it.
Well, I think I just have to get close to it and then use the clicker.
Oh, right. Yeah, that would make sense.
I tried to jump there and come to find out it isn't destroying the tornado, it's gravity.
Right. This is a Dark Souls game. Yeah, anticlimactic end of the story. With the trusty clicker in his pocket, Alan Wake strides confidently toward the tornado, missed a step, and plummeted to his death. The end.
Well, she did say I can't win. Oh, I think you're actually right.
Speaking of Dark Souls, Ben chimes in with try jumping. I feel like maybe you should be this close to it, but it seems like it's working, so...
It's all in your head.
This kind of reminds me of... And the frustrating thing is I can't remember any examples off the top of my head, but I know a couple, like, JRPGs and stuff we've played, where the final bit is the villain trying to mess with your characters or your parties you had as they fight. Like, why are you doing this? Do you think you'll change anything and stuff like that?
Right.
It's like, yeah, I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, but I can't remember, a good example.
Oh.
That was pretty great, actually.
Shh, baby. You were having a bad dream. It was just another nightmare.
No,
Everything's fine. You're home.
it wasn't a dream.
Everything's fine.
Whoa.
Turn the lights on!
Shh, baby. The power's out. There's no light. Come back to bed and I'll make you forget all about your fear in the dark.
My fear?
That's not
It's
even an
your
option.
fear. Why aren't you afraid? You're not Alice. Turn the lights on now. Where's the clicker? What did you do with it?
I love how you can actually see the dark tornado still going in the background. If there was even a glimmer of moment for a glimmer of confusion for a moment that this might actually be true.
Come back to bed.
Now that actually is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she's like right there.
Right.
I I read your manuscript. Departure is your best work yet. You're a genius. I'm so proud of you. Come back to bed. Talk more about it in the morning.
I kind of wish that they did some kind of the horror thing and have her just constantly slowly coming after you.
Right. If you want to go with like the
Come back to bed, Tom.
oh, okay, that's pretty good. Clicker. Well,
You must find your way to the cabin. It stands in your way. It won't let you pass. It has no heart. It's filled with darkness. You must fill its heart with light.
right, everybody, I think.
Don't mind him. He's Mr. Smith. Your friends will meet him when you're gone. Use the clicker.
Kingdom Hearts!
What I was going to say is, everybody's thinking of Devil May Cry. You can do it.
Huh.
But yeah, John. I think Alan is done with his search for Energizer brand batteries. I think we're. Oh well, okay. We sent the flashlight. Johnson, this is a real Deadly Premonition sequel.
Wait, it says thermos. Yes!
Yes.
Fake coffee is the best coffee.
It counts. But where's the clicker?
Yep, I do love that of all the things in there, thermos really was one of the first things I saw.
Yeah.
I have played this game too long.
Seriously. Don't like bird. It'll okay.
It's just one bird.
I thought it was going to summon like the birds.
I followed the idea of a path.
Yeah.
So we have, like,
I'm
the
leaving
platonic ideal of
I'm
path.
leaving you, Alan. I met
Huh.
someone. I'm in love with someone else.
Alice? No, what are you saying? You can't.
You don't love me. How could you? You don't even love yourself. All you do is torture yourself to work you can't do anymore.
No, I love you more than anything in the world. You're my muse. Who are you? What have you done with my Alice?
Alan? What are you doing? What are you doing, Alan? Stop! Put the light back on!
It wasn't true. Nothing like that had ever happened.
I had
Huh.
written myself across the ocean.
So now he actually is talking to himself. Huh.
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe they should have had one for TV, so there could have been one of those Night Springs, or the Alan like in the interrogation cell scenes.
Please, untie me, you naughty boy. I will help you let your mysteries. I will love you forever.
No, you're not Barbara Jagger. I made a terrible mistake. I should have never written you back. You came back wrong. Your heart is filled with darkness.
Put that knife away, Thomas. Put it down.
My heart is filled with darkness. I'll cut it out. I'll take you back to the dancing paper.
Well, that just got really dark.
Yeah.
Happened to be real.
If he had just used a Keyblade, this would all be okay. You're not Mick Jagger. Here we are. I almost want to say that this bird is probably going to be the evil bird, but we shall see.
Alice! Alice! I'm coming!
Your husband refused to do as he was told. All he had to do was write what I wanted him to write. Now it's too late. It's his fault. You'll stay here forever.
Now you will never get her back.
I am much older than you. Older than your first work of art. I will find a new face to wear. Someone else to dream me free.
I could feel Alice's presence close by. I understood what I had to do now. I knew how to write the ending to Departure. There's light and there's darkness. Cause and effect. There's guilt and there's atonement. But the scales always need to balance. Everything has a price. That's where Zane had gone wrong. There's a long journey through the night back into the light.
Alice? Alice? Oh no!
Could have just written her not falling in.
Well, if I don't miss my guess, that is actually the one thing he could not write.
Alan? Alan?
God bless Deerfest. Oh dear. surprised there's this many people left.
Remember, the way that he wrote it, he's the only one that died.
Oh, man. There he is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lake. It's an ocean.
Alan, wake up.
I think part of the idea was that since it was a horror story, and he made the point that things have to balance, somebody has to be in the lake at all times. So he decided to make it himself, which frees everybody else out. Is what I would guess.
I guess it's a good thing that Alice was a good swimmer. If it had been me, I wouldn't have made it.
Well, if it was the choice, brother of mine, I would have written that you made it to the edge of the lake. I'm a good enough writer for that. But yeah, that is Alan Wake, the final chapter.
Yeah,
we will probably be playing the expansions in the upcoming couple of weeks. But I think that's a pretty good place to close it on the night.
Yeah. I guess we can finish the credits on everything. Yeah, it was interesting.
It does, kind of make me want to put on my pretentious, storyteller interpretation hat and wax metaphysical on it, but I think I'll resist the urge.
Well, you should. That's part of the reason why we're doing the whole writer plays writer game.
Oh, true. A writerception. It's writers all the way down. But no, one of the things that I find really interesting about that idea is the idea that, whatever the dark thing is, you have to play by its rules. And the idea that, it basically has this series of potentialities, which I honestly think means that, part of the thing with what Alan was doing was the less it is defined by other people, the more power it has. Which means that if nobody is in control of it, it can control itself. Whereas by Alan, throwing himself in there, it at least has, it has a shape, it has a body, and therefore it has, that kind of aspect to it, much like it had with Jagger.
Right.
Whereas if he hadn't done that, then it could change the story however it wanted. Granted, I think he still kind of dipped into the whole idea of it being a hack because he set himself up for a sequel, but at least for a couple of years, the story is over.
Yeah, it does kind of make me wonder where the DLC is going to come in at.
Right. I'm sure that is going to be more sequel stuff than like in the middle of it or whatever.
Yeah.
The other thing that I kind of been thinking about it is this idea that when you have something like inspiration or whatnot, whenever humans, especially in the Occident, have created anything like a powerful deity or anything else like that, or even when they just find a new thing to think about, it actually has this series of cycles where it starts out with you have the idea and people greatly expand upon it, generally for about one generation or so. Then the next generation looks at it and says, this is all stupid, and they actually turn completely against it.
Right.
For example, you had the Enlightenment era, and after that was the Romantics, where they said, well, you all have taken the soul out of everything, so we're just going to throw rationalism out the window and do whatever. And if it doesn't make sense, it makes perfect sense, which is why we love it. Even Nietzsche pointed out that it is entirely possible that if there was no God, humanity would create a God simply for the pleasure of killing him. There's this weird thing where we create that which we love, and then we have this inert, this almost insatiable desire to destroy it, as long as we don't identify too closely with it.
It kind of reminds me of something I had read a while back about Greek mythology, and somebody had mentioned that it was like a combination of the Roman conquest and those darn East Orthodox Christians that wiped it out. It's like, no, actually it was Plato that put a stake in the heart of the Greek deities. It's like he didn't believe it, and he told all the philosophers not to believe it either. And within a generation, it's been pretty much completely discredited. You still had storytellers adding things here and there. Some of the weirder stuff came from the late 100, 200 BC. After that, but
And yeah, you really do have that idea that. And again, that's kind of what was happening because Plato looked at what the previous generation had. And yeah, everybody was invested in the gods. That's where you had some of the ones that don't have a lot of stories now. Your Odyssey, your Nike, your so forth. And people were starting to build up the cults and the ideas behind it. And then Plato turned entirely against it and said, basically all of this is bunk. And even the Stoic philosophers of the time basically said, if God isn't perfect, it's not God.
Right.
And therefore, all of these people with their really imperfect gods, this is all nonsense.
Right.
And yeah, then points out the cult of reason fits this pattern.
Right.
And actually, you're kind of seeing it now, where from about the 50s to 70s, America was very much a Christian nation, like to the point where radio players would say, go to your church or synagogue.
Right.
And then from the 70s to about the 2000s, it was much more of the New Age stuff.
I would say your New Age and the rise of neo-spiritualism.
Right. And then you had, nowadays, there's much more of a rise of atheism and agnosticism. And that was about, I would say about 2000 to 2010 and right about now. And now we're starting to go right back to more of the, again, more of the blanket spirituality.
Right.
And especially when you have things like a Satru and whatnot, people are actually trying to go to the old style religion. Like, how are things really like at the start? And they want to recapture that and reinterpret it. And they're starting to go, push back against the people that either don't believe anything or don't believe very much about it. Like even some of the Christian magazines aimed toward younger generations, a lot of things are, my church has a bunch of people that don't act Christian at all, and I'm frustrated with it.
Right.
And so, it's kind of interesting for me to have something like this. You have basically, the question of, if you have infinite potentiality, anything that can be defined is there. Well, what happens with it?
Right.
And yeah, I do find it kind of interesting that, it is defined as the dark presence. Because if, going back to your metaphysics and whatnot, darkness, void, chaos, all these other things are very much defined as a female thing. So when you have Jagger in there, that's basically what Mozart was talking about with the magic flute.
Right.
It's like you have the Queen of the Night. She is chaos, she is unreason. And it isn't until you get a man around. It was a different time back then, people. But you have, the people that are more enlightened. And so you have this situation now where you kind of have the combination of both, where you have a writer who uses that darkness and whatnot, but he is also, self-aware enough about it that he doesn't completely, do it unreasonably without heart in a literal sense. So that's some very interesting metaphor that they're using there.
I do think it might have been a little bit better if they had done it in the manner of order versus chaos, instead of because light versus darkness is a little played out, especially when you start talking
One
about...
second. Sprawl. Mozart confirmed sexist. I'm just quoting what he said. You were saying.
But yeah. So the whole light and darkness and everything needing to balance reminded me of Final Fantasy III. I mean, it's a very common device where I kind of think that if you had done it as the formless chaos, you're tearing things down. Basically, things that it kind of gets back to the whole idea of science is taxonomy.
Right.
You understand things, we can label them, put them in a box, and then forget about them.
Right.
It's like that is how that works, and it is what it is. And then you have in this manner a writer. You could do a scientist, you could do a writer or whatever. But you're somebody presenting that viewpoint. It's like we're having a story, we're setting it down, we're doing this, and the other side is everything else, that which is not defined, that which
And yeah, I do agree that trying to make it the whole light and darkness thing, that is very much Taoist yin yang nonsense, and I think they kind of required it by law. Also, Sprawl, again, I'm just quoting Mozart. I'm just saying what his theme was. Although that does remind me when I was listening to the opera here in town, and see Evan. But when I was listening to it at the opera here in town, they actually had a narrator who was more self-aware about it. And they actually, condensed down Mozart's basically the screed that was going on through Sarastro, talking, and then he said a great deal of anti-feminist propaganda or something like that. Ven, you can call it Taoist. It can be spelled and or pronounced as Tao. It depends on which character you're using. Yes, if you're using it as the Taoist, then go for it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that that Ben and I have talked about before. It's like if you have basically have in the actual Chinese, how you would spell that one would be with the D sound.
Right.
But at this point, it's kind of like Tao is kind of its own English loan word.
Right.
That's kind of what Ben was going for.
Especially since Taoism is actually a completely different animal than how the West thinks the East thinks about Taoism. So, but yeah, and again, I really like some of the metaphor that they were using for this. It's just
pretty much the entirety of Chapter 5 should have been redone.
Right.
So I don't mind like Alan gears up and takes a fight back against the darkness.
Right.
But if you consider this chapter and the last one, that's like 3.5 hours of Alan taking rifles and shotguns and shooting possessed dudes.
Right.
I mean, that's not it's a little distracting from your overall narrative.
Yeah. And likewise, I kind of have a problem with the idea that it isn't until the very end where a lot of the the writer definition stuff really comes into play. Because I think it would have been kind of neat if once Alan starts figuring out more of what's going on, that he can start maneuvering things more to his advantage.
Right.
Swift can't wait for the DLC. I am very interested in finding out how it goes.
Yeah, we're definitely doing that next week, and probably next week. Do you think we have plans on Sunday?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay, I'm probably going to go visit family tomorrow. So yeah, I might stream earlier. I'm going to be doing something American for the 4th of July stream. So I'll probably do that earlier in the afternoon, and then hit family later on when it's a little bit warmer.
Right.
Or a little bit warmer. Anytime it's a little bit warm, a little bit cooler, later on.
Yeah, exactly, Lorax. Why wasn't Alan surrounded by his ever-growing thermos collection?
And whereas John was saying this was definitely at a time when third-person shooter mechanics were required, like police procedural.
Yeah.
Police procedurals.
Thermoses contain the darkness.
Yeah, Alan drinks his coffee dark. Well, that's what the black sludge was. So it was just the really
age-old coffee. Yeah. You want to make a show, you make a show, but you make a police procedural, or else it doesn't get green light.
That is a really good point. The glut of pretty much from I think the third Law and Order all the way up through NCIS and stuff like that. It's like there were dozens.
Even
of
things
cop
like
shows.
Dexter and whatnot. You had to have the idea. Well, it has to be a cop show somehow.
Right.
Which, if I may again put on my writer hat, it actually is one of the frustrations that I find, and I kind of wish that they had gone more into it here.
Right.
With the idea of you have to stick to genre. It's like if you start changing things much at all, then you have the problem of a lot of people just say, well, this isn't what I want, I'm not going to buy it. But conversely, if it's exactly the same, well, it's exactly the same, I don't want it. Whereas, as the Save the Cat person put it, give you the same thing but different.
Right.
So I like the idea of if they had actually gone into what happens if you try to write something like that, and just have it be, no, that ruins the story.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I think it would have been cool if maybe move chapter 4 closer to the end, like maybe all the big reveals and everything, and have chapter 3 maybe be one where, or rearrange things a little bit, but have a chapter revolve around Alan trying to cheat and how it backfires. Right. Just to show that he tried it.
Yeah.
He finds out what's going on with writing and everything. It's like, okay, what if I? See, they turn it into an action movie anyway,
right?
Which kind of hurt his point a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe have him try to cheat the system and have things go horribly awry.
Yeah, because that actually is, it's actually part of the story structure, where you have, before the fun and games part, you have what's called the false resolution.
Yeah, the big setback, right?
And yeah, it would have been great if he tried to do something and things go horrifically wrong, and that then lets us know why not to do that, instead of having you and I constantly arguing back and forth. It's like, well, it's like this, well, maybe it's like that, but why is it like that? I don't know. It's just deal with it. Rioter, sucker. We've got rules.
Yeah, because at this point, it's like, you assume that, everything was written in sequence with horror and everything.
Right.
It's like Alan being forced to gun down, his friends because they're controlled by darkness.
Right.
That is bad news. But at the very end, it's like, well, I took their place and everything's okay.
Right.
It's back the way it was. It's like, yeah,
It was all a dream.
It's like, yeah, he did have to sacrifice. There is that,
Right.
but it's like he made everything okay,
Right.
except for that. Even Deerfest came back,
Well, if it hadn't been Deerfest, then that would have been straight on from horror to absolute tragedy.
Right.
But yeah, and I kind of wish they had gotten more into that. At least, if you're going to have the big thing where if something isn't defined, it's evil, you should at least define your plot a little bit more.
But yeah, all of that being said, it's like in the final analysis of it, Alan Wake was starting to lose me with the last chapter. This one ended pretty well,
Right.
I think. All given the circumstances. I think it's still one of the better games, especially for its time, because there's always terrible games coming out every year.
Yeah.
But the 2010, 2011, 2012, there was some written by Alan Wake.
Departure, written by Alan Wake.
You're going to give us the rest of his bibliography while we're at it, game?
Oh, the Journey Through the Night will continue. That's a promise.
If you have the DLC, which we do.
Which we do.
Yeah, that's what I heard. They're talking about how Dexter was a book and whether it was better or worse, and then putting out one pretty supernatural too. Okay.
But yeah, and the other thing too, just being like, how much control can he have over the thing itself?
Right.
By simply saying it's not a lake, it's an ocean. Dun dun dun. It's like, well, wait a minute. What does that even mean? You can't throw metaphor around irresponsibly. He's a hack, but you know what I mean. Regardless, that was the conclusion of the main story of Alan Wake.
Mm-hmm.
Next Sunday, we'll try to start DLC number 1, which is
I think the Signal and then the Rider, or the other way around.
Yeah, it's one of the two. I'm trying to remember which one was which. The Signal.
Yeah, Signal first. Okay.